Exodus 17:8-16. The Amalekites came and attacked the Israelites at Rephidim. Moses said to Joshua, "Choose some of our men and go out to fight the Amalekites. Tomorrow I will stand on top of the hill with the staff of God in my hands." So Joshua fought the Amalekites as Moses had ordered, and Moses, Aaron, and Hur went to the top of the hill. As long as Moses held up his hands, the Israelites were winning. But whenever he lowered his hands, the Amalekites were winning. When Moses' hands grew tired, they took a stone and put it under him, and he sat on it. Aaron and Hur held up his hands, one on one side, one on the other, so that his hands remained steady till sunset. So Joshua overcame the Amalekites' army with the sword. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Write this on a scroll as something to be remembered, and make sure that Joshua hears it, because I will completely blot out the name of Amalek from under heaven." Moses built an altar and called it, "The Lord is my banner," he said, because hands were lifted up against the throne of the Lord. The Lord will be at war against the Amalekites from generation to generation.
How are we doing? Excellent. So thank you, Cheryl, for doing that. She said yes right before the service started, so I'm glad, did well. So, who's ready for the holidays to be over? Anyone? Summer? Who's ready not for the holidays to be over? All the kids are putting their hands up. I don't think I want to go back to school either. So, we've just come from Easter last week. Good Friday, Easter Sunday. And when we think about what it was that happened then, and what it actually means, and the fact that Jesus was crucified on the Friday, and then later on the Sunday morning, he was actually raised to life again. That itself is a miracle. It's almost unbelievable if we didn't have the written accounts from the people who actually saw him alive afterwards. But even more than that is what it actually means for us and what it has meant for us to be able to do and who we are able to be. Because through that, what he did was he removed the barrier that there was between us and God, that there has been right from when Adam and Eve sinned in the Garden of Eden. And by taking it all on himself and actually paying that price, he made it possible for that barrier to be removed. As long as we actually turn to him and say, "I know that I'm in the wrong. I know that I am not connected to you, and I need you to forgive me and wipe it away." And when we do that, he does that. But he's just waiting for us to turn back to him first. But that's what that means. But there's something else happened in the moment that he died. And that in 3 of the 4 Gospels, it says that the curtain in the temple was actually ripped from top to bottom. Now, the Jews had the temple, and then in the temple, they had the innermost part, the inner sanctuary, called the Holy of Holies. And there was a curtain that blocked that off to everyone else. It was only the high priest who could go in there. And that was only once a year. And he did that on behalf of everyone. So, and that was seen as him going into the presence of God to actually be that person in between for everyone. And that was all that they could rely on. But what happened in that moment? Now, this curtain was about 30 feet high, so it wasn't short. And each of the Gospels tells us that it was actually torn in half from top to bottom. It was God that actually ripped it. And what it shows us is that, thank you, sir. And what it shows us is that in that moment where Jesus died, God is now saying, he is the way to me. You don't have to rely on anybody else coming. You can do it yourself because of him. And so he's ripped that to show each one of us individually can come to him. Because Jesus is now the one standing in the gap for us. There is no other human being who can fill that role for us. It's only him. But because of that, we can come to him individually. And that's what our responsibility is. Now, this availability we have, it's done primarily through prayer, through what we call prayer. Now, I don't know what your idea of prayer is or what your experience of it is or anything like that, but I know for me for a long time, I was always in the trap of all prayer is please God this, please God that. Thank you God for this day. We should always be thanking for that day, but if we just leave it at, oh, thanks for this day, it's great. What is that? Often it has more depth and potential than we give it credit for, or that we believe it can have. And if you are wanting any sort of relationship or connection with him, and a stronger one with him, then it actually starts with the depth of your prayer and what that is. Now, as most simplified version, prayer is simply us with God. That's what that is. It's time with him, it's being with him. And it can happen anywhere at any time. And it should happen more at any time and everywhere. If I only talk to Monique once a week, that's not going to be a great marriage. She might prefer that, I don't know, but no. But that's not going to work. And too often we get this idea in our heads, or we fall into the trap of, oh, I'll pray to God when I'm at church on Sunday. I'll pray then. Or I'll be there when other people are praying, so that counts, right? Or I'll say a real quick one in the morning, so I've done it, and then I'm sorted. But that's actually not what it's all about. Jesus didn't die on the cross and go through all that and then rise again simply for us to say, hey God, I'll catch up with you this morning. Cheers, see ya. That kind of actually, well, it does. It completely defeats the purpose of what he did and what he accomplished and what he made available for us. We need it to be more than just, please God this, please God that. We need to be more than just casually touching base with him every now and then. Like this is literally the God who created the whole universe. He's saying, I want to spend time with you. Why would we say no to that? But there's so much more to it as well. And so we're looking at this part in Exodus chapter 17, which at the outset doesn't appear to have much prayer in it, but it's actually a picture of what it can and should be for us. So what we see just before this has happened, so the Israelites have been wandering through the desert, and they've come to this place called Rephidim. And just before this, they were complaining and grumbling that they had no water to drink. So that's when God got Moses to go up the front with the staff. He had some of the other elders around him as well. And he said, strike the rock and I'll provide water. And that's what happened. So they were all got all the water they needed for their animals, for themselves, for everything that they needed. Now, maybe a couple of days, maybe a week later, who knows. But so they're still camped at this place called Rephidim. And then the Amalekites attacked, one of the other nations around. This is where we pick up in verse 8. So the Amalekites came and attacked the Israelites at Rephidim. Pretty straightforward. And then, this is the response from the leaders. Moses said to Joshua, "Choose some of our men and go out to fight the Amalekites. And tomorrow I will stand on top of the hill with the staff of God in my hands." So Moses and Joshua, they're the current leader and the 2IC of the whole Israelite nation. And Joshua is generally the military leader of Israel. We don't read of Moses really being in any battles, but he's still their leader that God has put there. And then Joshua is his 2IC. He's the one that will replace him at some stage. But he's the one who's always leading the army and leading the battle. And in their plan that Moses sets out, we already kind of see two parts to it. Okay, that they're about to undertake. Joshua will lead the army and they'll go fight the battle with the swords and the shields and the spears and whatever else they use. And then Moses simply says, "I'm going to go up on the top of that hill with the staff of God in my hands." He's going to be there over the whole battle that's going on underneath. And we don't know why Moses decided to go up there with the staff, why he thought it was a good idea at all. Maybe God had told him, we don't know. But that's what he's done. So that's the plan. He says, tomorrow you take the army, go out, fight them, and I'm going to be up on that hill over the whole battle. So Joshua fought the Amalekites as Moses had ordered, and Moses, Aaron, and Hur went to the top of the hill. Joshua leads them out, and Moses takes Aaron and Hur up with him. How's that for a bloke's name, Hur? I'm not sure if I'd like that. It's interesting. But anyway. Ben-Hur, yeah. So Moses took Aaron and Hur up onto the hill with him. So there they can see everything that's going on. And the two leaders have their two respective parties with them for what's about to unfold. And then verse 11 is the turning point of what we see. It's the crux kind of verse in this whole passage. As long as Moses held up his hands, the Israelites were winning. But whenever he lowered his hands, the Amalekites were winning. Now that's interesting. What was happening with Moses up on top of that hill was actually impacting what happened down in the battle. The thing is, there's actually two battles going on here, but they're both going to have the same result. You got Joshua, he's leading the army with the swords and the shields and the spears in the battle that everyone can see going on. Then you got Moses with Aaron and Hur up on the top of the hill. I'm assuming it's something like this, with his hands up. And while his hands were up, Joshua and his men were winning. But whenever these hands were lowered, they were losing. Now I wonder how Moses found that out. Did he kind of start that way and they were winning and dropped them to go have a look at everything going on? It's like, hang on a minute. Something's changed now. Good. Oh no. How did he find out? I don't know. But he found out somehow. And so every time his hands were up, they were winning. That actually shows us that there's something more going on than just a guy up there with his hands up. There's something going on which can't be seen happening up there. And whatever was happening was affecting what could be seen. And I want to say that is what it means to pray. Actually being involved in something which you can't physically see. Prayer takes us into that place. Prayer is how that fight is fought. And that is what has an impact on everything that we can see. See, there is more than just this world that we can see and feel and touch around us. There is a spiritual side. We are not just physical flesh and bone people. We actually have things which you can't see. We have a spirit, we have a soul. And we need to be doing what God is asking us to, both here with what we can see and touch, and with what we can't see and touch. And that's what is happening here. There was another battle happening up on that hill that nobody could see, but it was affecting the battle that could be seen. See, prayer is more than just a chat with God to keep in touch every now and then. It's being a key to his work in our world that we can see. And what it does, it also kind of brings us into what he is wanting to do. Now, we obviously don't fight with swords and shields and spears, and we don't do that. That's not what our fight looks like anymore. But have a think. What are the battles seemingly for God and for Christianity and for people that can be seen? So what about sanctity of life that God has created? When it comes to abortion and assisted suicide? What about addictions that get a hold on people's lives that need to be broken? Whether it's gambling or drugs or alcohol, who knows what? Anything can actually be an addiction if we let it. What about anxiety and depression and other forms of ill mental health? That they get a grip on people so that they can't function. Lifestyles that are openly contrasting to God's way and are celebrated as being the best of humanity. Other evils in the world like child sex slavery, domestic abuse, sickness, ill health, poverty, wars that are happening for who knows what reason. Getting the gospel into tribes and people groups that don't have it yet and facing the opposition of those who up until then have had control over those people. Those are the things that we can see. They're the fights that we can see being fought, whether it's at government level, within organizations, wherever it's happening. But there are steadfast and faithful Christians fighting these every day. And we need people fighting them in this way. We need people coming up with strategies and ways of actually moving in and doing these things. Imagine if Joshua had have gone out, no armor, no swords, no shields, no plan, just gone, we'll be right. God's got this. They had to be fighting as well as what was happening up on top of that hill. We need Christians fighting these ways in the ways that can be seen. It's a necessary part of the fight, but it isn't alone what's going to win. And this is where praying is so much more important than just touching base with God every now and then. See, prayer is where the battle is won. The invisible battle. It's where it was won here with what we see with Moses and Joshua, and it's no different for us today. And it won't have an impact if we're just every now and then going to God and saying, hey, just reminding you this is going on, sort it out please, cheers. That's not what it's about. That is actually going to have zero effect. I was reading a book about this and it says, when we work. But when we pray, God works. That's what it's about. What did Moses' hands being up represent? We were talking about this during the week, and it's surrender. It's this battle is yours, God, and it's keeping that going. The result was up to God and no one else, really, but Moses just had to keep leaving it in his hands and surrendering it to him. And then think about Joshua as well on the other side of this. He was an elite warrior, an elite leader. And his faith in God was elite, yes. It was, it absolutely was. But this was not a battle that he could win based on his own ability or strength, as good as it was on his own. It wasn't even a battle that could be won based on his own faith alone. He was relying on Moses for that. That's trust in your leader. I wonder if every now and then when he saw Moses' hands come down, if he thought about retreating or if he lost hope in what's going on. I don't know, we don't read about that. I can actually picture him going, we got to keep on going anyway. He will fight that battle and we will keep fighting this one as long as we're still going. But narrow this down now. What about fighting for your family? What are the things that can be seen going on with your family? Maybe it's your kids or your partner or your parents or maybe extended family or even close friends, whoever it is. What about fighting for them? What is happening with them in their lives that can be seen? And yes, there are probably things that we can do that can be seen to help with that. But let's go beyond that. Let's do more for them than just what can be seen. How about you fight for them in the way that no one else can actually see? How about you surrender them and what's happening with them and their whole lives to God? Put them in His hands and don't try and control what's going on yourself. And that's going to be an ongoing thing. It has to be. See, this isn't just a big world thing. It comes back to us as people and with the people that we are close with and connected with. How are you fighting for your family and for your friends? See, we need more than just our own faith. While we are fighting this battle in this world, while we are going through this world, pushing through it, we need more than just ourselves. We were not created to do this alone, either physically or spiritually. And that's what we see in verse 12. When Moses' hands grew tired, they took a stone, they put it under him, and he sat on it. Aaron and Hur held his hands up, one on one side and one on the other, so that his hands remained steady till sunset. Moses couldn't physically keep holding his hands up all day. As much as he would have tried, he couldn't. And whether he knew at the start why he was taking Aaron and Hur with him or not, in that moment he knew why they were there. And they knew it wasn't their place to hold their own hands up instead of him. Because God has called us to different things, and some things He has called just the leaders to do, but He hasn't called the leaders to do it alone. So Aaron and Hur, they sat him down, got one each side, and they held his hands up for him. And then it says his hands remained steady till sunset. We don't know when they started, but I'm betting it was pretty early in the day. It wasn't a one-time or a short-term thing. It was an extended time where he had to be in this moment. Even praying is not a solo thing. Yes, there is personal prayer, which is crucial to our own relationship with God. That's not going away. That is absolutely essential. But prayer as fighting this battle is not. In Matthew chapter 18, Jesus is talking to his disciples, I think it was. It could have just been other people there as well. But he said, "Truly I tell you that if two of you on earth agree about anything they ask for, it will be done for them by my Father in heaven. For where 2 or 3 gather in my name, there am I with them." It's not something we're designed to do on our own. We need other people. We need other people in this with us. You are not an island. You're not a silo. Don't try and be. Because God, who put us all together, didn't actually create us to be like that. And then we see the result in verse 13. So Joshua overcame the Amalekite army with the sword. Joshua won the visible battle that everyone was looking at and could see as a result of Moses winning the spiritual battle that no one else could really see. And all they could see was him up there with like this. But there was so much more going on. But this is still true today. I want to jump over to Ephesians 6. So, this is Paul at the end of his letter to a church in Ephesus. So, and he's been going through who they are, what Christ has done for them, and everything like that. And now he's saying, this is what's got to happen from now on. Now, I just want to pull out some highlights from this, because it's prayer is all through there. So in verse 10, it says, finally, be strong in the Lord and in his mighty power. Put on the full armor of God so that you can take your stand against the devil's schemes. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. Sounds kind of sci-fi-ish, like it'd be a cool movie. The fact is, that's what this is. There are the things we see in this world where we go, well, that's against God, that's not right, why are we doing this? But they are a result of something happening which we can't see. And all through those verses alone, there is prayer. Be strong in the Lord. Put on the armor. How do you put it on? It's by praying. It's by coming to God with him and going, I need your truth. I need your righteousness. I need to be covered by you. Taking our stand against the devil's schemes. That might have a physical appearance with something specific, but it's way more than just that. It is way more than just, I'm going to say no to this. There is something going on inside which actually has to lead to that. And lead to it actually lasting more than a few seconds. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood. It's not actually against what we can see. That's just the result of what's happening where we can't see it. He says again, therefore put on the full armor of God. In verse 14, he says, stand firm then. It's the same thing. It happens through prayer. It happens through this thing that is going on that no one can see. It could be happening in us individually. It could be happening with us all together. But it's got to start on the spiritual side. Then after he mentions all the different armors of God, then in verse 18, he says, and pray in the Spirit on all occasions with all kinds of prayers and requests. With this in mind, be alert and always keep on praying for all the Lord's people. And pray also for me, that whenever I speak, words may be given me so that I will fearlessly make known the mystery of the gospel. Prayer is not just this, hey God, how's it going kind of thing. There is way more to it than just touch and base with him. It is actually what affects everything that we see. It affects the lives of the people around us. It affects the lives and the work of the people who are fighting these different things that we can see. But more than that, it's the way of you connecting with him in a way that is only available because of him to start with. And if you want to bring this down right back to a personal level, what is happening in you or from you or because of you that people can see or that you can see? But where is it starting? All of it starts with what's happening on the spiritual side of us. And that's what we have to take into account. We need to deal with what can't be seen, with the parts of us that can't be seen. before there's going to be any lasting and proper and meaningful change in what we can see, in our actions, in our habits, in what we say. So I want to challenge you that there's something going on, whether it's with you specifically or in your family or your friends or wherever it is. Actually, pray. Deal with the spiritual side of it first, or look into that first at least. Because then the physical will actually be affected as well. What can be seen will actually be affected as well. So I'll ask the band to come back up. I'm just going to finish with prayer, but I want to add one more thing about it. There shouldn't be anything fancy about praying. There isn't. See, if we're trying to make it look good, then it's not really prayer at all. It's simply a show. Talk to God like you're talking to someone who's right next to you. That's what it is. Because we can do that. Because He is the one connecting us to the Father, to God. He is the one there for us, so we can talk to Him as if we're talking to who's next to us. There's no words specifically that you have to use. Because the cool thing is that God already knows what you're trying to say, even if you don't know how to say it. But simply start talking to Him. And ask Him to show up, to show you the things which are happening, which you probably can't see, which other people can't see, that's happening in here. Because you'll honor that if you truly want to know. God, we are so grateful that we can speak with you, that we can be with you. We don't need bells and whistles or anything like that, because all you are simply looking for us is for us to come to you. You were the one who removed the barrier between us and made a way for that to be completely washed away. And for me, that's reason enough that I want to come to you. I thank you for the way that you make people new. I thank you for the way that you have defeated all evil. That you have power over it. But I'm sorry, we don't get involved like you are asking us to either. We think of the people who are doing everything they can to be following you. And figuring out how that they can actually fight these things. To fight the evils that are in the world. To fight what is going wrong. To try and actually bring us back to what life should be like. And God, I'm sorry that we can actually let them down by not praying truthfully and honestly and in a way that you have asked us to. God, I ask for a change in all of our hearts today. In the place where we can't physically see anything. Change our desires. Change the things that we long for, that we want to do. Change our priorities. So that we can see in the things that can be seen, the things that are visible, what it is you are doing and how you can recreate our lives for so much more. God, you are good and you are King. And we need you as King over this world, over our communities, over our families, and over us as individuals. Because at some stage we got a tendency to mess it up. So I thank you for the way that you have made, for who you are and who you have called us to be. In Jesus' name, amen.